Hello.
Good afternoon, Adam Hollioake.
Good afternoon there. How you going?
Fine, thank you. Thank you so much for talking to BWTM TV, Adam.
No, it's a pleasure. Proud to be asked to be on here.
Okay, for those who don't know who Adam Hollioake is, could you give them a brief overview of who you are?
Yeah, well, my name's Adam Hollioake, and I used to be the captain for Surrey and captain of England. And more recently, I've turned to professional boxing and professional mixed martial arts, but people probably know me more for my captaincy of Surrey in England.
Okay, so got to go straight down to it. The conversation, or the reason why I've called you, is to talk about your expertise as a former captain of not just a county, but of a country as well. What does it take to be a captain?
Well, I think the most important thing the captain has to do is he has to be able to justify his place in the team. That's first and foremost. Now, cricket's a game played between 11 players, and if as a captain you're not up to it yourself, then you're putting your team one down straight away. So, it's 11 versus 10. So, number one, they've got to be able to be good enough to play on their side, as it is. And then number two, probably just as importantly as the first point, is you've got to have the respect of your players. You're going to go out there when you go into the pitch, you're going to ask your players to do things, and if they don't respect you as an individual and as a cricketer, then you're probably going to find that a much harder job than someone who's got a lot of respect for you. It's the same as any job. If your boss is asking you to do something and you don't respect him, that becomes a much harder ask for the boss. So I think they're probably the two most important. There's so many different points that come into captaincy. And, if we're talking about a club side or a county side or an international side, there's many different facets of that, but they're probably the two most basic things that spring to mind.
Okay, you say that, but there's a lot of incidents I could probably pull out to you. For example, Darren Sammy may not have been the best player on the West Indies side, and sometimes people question why he's even on the side, but yet he's a captain.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's actually something which has been levelled at myself as well. So, I'm not saying it can't happen, but I think it makes it much harder. I think even everyone in the West Indies would have to admit, if Darren Sammy had the ability of a Brian Lara, then that takes away those questions and enables him to just concentrate on being the captain. And obviously, I think then the rest of the side would also probably, some of them might have those questions, wouldn't be able to have them anymore. So it's just nice to be able to just be taken as the individual and not have your place in the team questioned, I guess.
I remember another player, Michael Vaughan. He had an excellent tour down in Australia, scoring 400 or 500s. Unheard of for an Englishman to go to Australia and score all those runs. But he came back to England. He was ranked number one in the world as the best batsman in the world after that phenomenal run. But he went through a period in the side where his form was close to shocking. But he was still captain of the side because people recognised him as a top player. They say form is temporary, but class is permanent. Is that a good enough reason for a person to be in the side?
Well, it's a good subject because it's open to so many different arguments. I think players throughout their career will always, form will dip. I think in the instance of Michael Vaughan, we all knew he was a good player, and we knew that he'd come good. It's much the same as Brian Lara or having a couple of bad series. They're good players. Once someone's been number one player in the world, you know that it's just a matter of time before they come good again. So I guess the only exception to that would be when they're coming towards the end of their career is when to move on with a younger player. But I think if you've been number one player in the world, I don't think there's any doubt that you're good enough to be in the side, and any lapses in form, they hit all the best players. I think every single player, even Session Dorker, who some people say is the best player since Bradman, even he's had dips in forms. So, that's just something that captains have to deal with, and I guess media have to try and understand.
Now, a lot of people listening to this interview would say, that's it. So we get the best player on the side, he should be captain. I'm sure that's not what you're trying to say here.
No, absolutely not. I mean, that's you picked up nicely there on my on my mistake. It's you can't. I mean, there's been many examples of very good players not being the right type of person to be a captain. Like I said at the beginning, I think you need to be somebody who's respected by the other players. So you might be a good player. If you don't have the respect of the rest of the players, it does become a very hard job. And you know, these are all variables. They're not. You can't. You're putting all these things into a melting pot, and you're trying to come up with a guess as to who's going to be the best captain. So you know, you might take your top 5 players and say, okay, one of these has got to be our captain, or well, we don't want to pick that guy's captain, albeit he's potentially tactically the best captain. He's not guaranteed a place in his side. So all these things go into the melting pot, and you've got to try and work out, you know, who that captain might be out of your team. And then there's rare instances, you know, where you know the true greats captains of the world, like like Clive Lloyd. You know, he was justified his place in the side. Wonderful player, also a wonderful human being, and therefore respected by all these players. And that creates a perfect as such, and you end up with a great captain, much the same as Mark Taylor or Steve Waugh or Viv Richards. Andrew Strauss, you know, these guys they've proved their place in the side. They were one of the better players in the side, and also respected as individuals. That goes on to make them a great captain.
I'm going to bring up a contentious situation. I guess that's just my style. Kevin Pietersen, known around the world as a fantastic player. Well, you know, he goes one way or the other. He's going to go and play his extravagant way and score you lots of runs, or he's going to get out looking pretty silly trying to play a shot he really shouldn't be playing. But that's just the nature of the beast when it comes to KP. He took this approach and became captain of England. And his flamboyant approach wasn't respected. I don't know what it was as of how he was reviewed by a lot of the players, but certainly by the management now, he didn't seem like he was supported by them.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's again a good question and an interesting topic that you're bringing up, because you know everything you say about Kevin as a player is true. You know, he's also, I think, been number 1 player in the world, or if he hasn't been number 1, he's up there. There's no doubting his ability, there's no doubting the flamboyancy of the way he bats. And you know, a captain shouldn't try and change that when he becomes captain. I don't think the rest of the players would expect that. It's also been fairly well documented that Kevin's, he's a difficult character. He's, I think, by his own admission, he would admit that he's not. He's one of those, black or white characters. There's no gray with Kevin Pietersen. You either love him or you hate him, and I think sometimes that type of personality doesn't always lend itself to captaincy. I don't think there'd be one player in the world that would doubt Kevin Pietersen's talent as a batsman, but I think even he might question whether his personality suits the role as captain. He's a difficult character. He's highly strung, and that might be one of the things that makes him a great batsman. But just unfortunately, there's certain personality traits that don't always lend themselves to captaincy.
Okay, we'll give you another situation here. A good player for England, all-rounder like yourself, Freddie Flintoff. He had an excellent Australian summer in England, taking loads of wickets, scoring runs with a bat, and was appointed England captain. Now, he was a workhorse as a bowler. He was one of the frontline batsmen as an all-rounder, and then given captaincy. And as we saw in the series, his captaincy was brought into question simply because, the workload was just too much for me, for one. And for two, Freddie just needs to be that all-round player and just do what he needs to do. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's again, that's another fantastic, a question as well. I mean, there's history sort of littered with these characters. All rounders are often revered by countries. You've got Ian Botham was another one who was, wonderful batsman, bowler, fielder. Didn't quite ever cut it as a captain. Sometimes these individually brilliant people, like we've already mentioned Kevin Peterson, sometimes their personalities don't suit captaincy. Sometimes, in the instance of Andrew, he just might have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, he had a lot of injuries in his side. The team hit a bad run for him. He hit a very strong Australian side who were totally motivated for revenge from the series lost before. And it just all, again, perfect storm led to him having a terrible series. I think they lost 5-0 out here as captain. And, sometimes when you get down in a series, it's very hard to come back. I think that in different circumstances, Freddie could actually be a decent captain. But I think also, like we said, he's one of those guys who's almost, some people are better being led rather than doing the leading. And, it just didn't work out. And at another time in his career, it might have done, but I think maybe at that particular time in his career, he needed to just be led by a calming sort of influence by someone like an Andrew Strauss. Actually, there's a lot of there's a lot of similarities between what happened with Ian Botham being captain after his wonderful series against Australia, and it hadn't happened. He was made captain and then lost the captaincy and had his wonderful series against Australia. But then, a captain like Mike Brearley comes along, who, I would say Andrew Strauss is a sort of similar, sensible, stable kind of captain, came along and enabled those guys to just play at their best. So with Freddie playing underneath Michael Vaughan, another sort of sensible, stable character, it just enabled them to get on and concentrate on being great all-rounders.
Great. I'm going to give you another example of a player fantastic player, but once captaincy was given to them, they kind of like went within themselves rather than kind of was a leader, and that's Shivnarine Chanderpaul.
Yeah, well, and that's, there's a lot. I think a lot of players, one of the things you have to deal with as a captain is you have to try and maintain the standard that you did before you became captain. There's no doubt captaincy is a massive burden and it's a massive job. I always liken it to the amount of work that needs to go in as being a batsman or a bowler. So if you're a batsman and you become a captain, then you've got batting and captaincy. If you're an all-rounder and you bat, you bowl, you've got bat, bowling and captaincy. So I look at it as another thing that you've got to focus on. And some people, it's just too much. They can't focus on one thing at a time, and it becomes difficult. Other people feel the pressure of needing to be the focal point of the team, and they change the way they play, and ultimately that can be disastrous. So, I think again there's a graveyard of captains out there who have been, that's why there's always that statistic on your TV screens that you see come up. It's like their average as a normal player, and then their average
as a captain.
Yeah, so that's why that statistic comes up, because it really can affect your game. And some players like Michael Clarke, for example, has just gone on to another level since he became made captain. So some people it really helps, other people not so.
But here's the real question here: what is it mentally that sparks off from a player that takes that captaincy and it makes them become a greater player, and the other player that takes the captaincy and it suddenly makes them lose their form? What is it, do you think, it is mentally that goes on, Adam?
Well, I think it all revolves around pressure. There's no doubt when you're the captain, everyone's watching you more so than the other players, and people are expecting more. So it's just the pressure and how you deal with that. So in the instance of the person that goes on to score more runs as a captain, some people like that pressure. Some people, it makes them play more responsibly, and therefore their average goes up. And then there's other people who they clam up, they go within themselves, and that in itself can be a disaster for a batsman. And I keep referring to batsmen here because we haven't seen many bowlers recently that have been captains. So
agreed.
But so I'm sort of biasedly referring to captaincy as batsmen. So they're the that's each case is different. Different people feel different pressures, but there is no doubt that with captaincy becomes more pressure.
Okay, I'm going to move just slightly away from captaincy at the moment and really talk about. I'm going to go to, or I want to really turn the captaincy really on to Adam Hollioake and what you did as captain. Now, I remember watching on television back all those years ago. Remember one game in particular that you were really fired up and you came out and blasted the ball to all parts and England won a one-day game. Was captaincy for you based on emotion and a sort of gut feeling, or did you have a model, an idea of a captain that you'd seen previously and said, I like the way he does that. I'm going to try and adapt my style to be like that?
Well, first of all, thanks for pointing out it was such a long time ago, mate. You're making me really old now. But no, it's a good question. I personally was probably an overly emotional player. I tended to play a lot on emotion and how I was feeling. But the other side of the question was, is there someone I copied? Now, there's no one in particular that I copied. I think in life we all copy somebody. So you see someone do something good and you try and bring that element into your game. I saw elements from Steve Waugh that I really liked of his captaincy. I saw elements from Alan Border which I really liked of his captaincy. Elements from Viv Richards and from people like Graham Gooch. So I tried to bring all of these things into my captaincy and take a little bit from everyone. Tried to take bits of each person. I was fortunate we had Alex Stewart at my club at Surrey, who was also a very good captain, and I grew up underneath him, so I learned picked up things from him along the way as well. So I think you're always trying to add the best bits of everybody, and I think that's something that we'll do, not just in cricket and not just in captaincy.
I have to say that you did play in the glory years. I hate to say the past glory years when it comes to Surrey Cricket Club, because you really had like almost a galacticos of players playing for Surrey. You had yourself, there was Thorpe, there was Stewart. Your brother played for Surrey at one point as well. There was Rampakash as well, joined Surrey. So you had a lot of good players there at Surrey.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just some of the ones you've mentioned. We all don't forget our overseas players with Saqlain Mushtaq, Waqar Yunus. We had Alex Tudor, Mark Butcher. At one stage we had 14 international players in our squad, which that means 3 people who played for England were playing in our second team. So it was a really, really strong side. We had a lot of strong characters, and I think that's probably why we went on and won 9 trophies underneath my captaincy.
Well, the question has to be asked, and I have to ask that question, unfortunately, Adam, because you were playing with such a strong side. Almost like the thing that was pointed at Ponting, they said, well, you've got a great side, you don't have much captaincy to do. Is that true, or is that a bit harsh?
I think there's an element which is fair. People always say to me, what's the best thing about your captaincy at Surrey? And I said, well, the best thing about my captaincy is I had the best players. I think you can take the best captain in the world. If the players aren't good enough, then you can't win. And by the same token, with the best players, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to win. You still need to manage those players. We've all seen great sides that don't perform. So it's a bit of a double-sided coin. It's hard to say. I mean, I think that any captain that had come in and done a good job, and you needed to do a good job, an average job wouldn't have been good enough, then I think they could definitely have been successful. It made my job a hell of a lot easier having all those good players. But saying that, we'd never won anything since 1971 before I became captain, and those players we'd always had good players. So something was obviously missing. So all those things together, and good players, which you absolutely have. And I'm not saying I could be the best captain in the world, and without good players, we wouldn't have won anything. So all those things come together and made us a really successful side there for the whole 90s and early 2000s.
For you as captain, what was a moment that you could say, oh yeah, that was a moment of brilliance, whether it be moving a player in a position, whether it be scoring the winning runs? But really, I think really let's go back to the point of tactical play, because you going out and bashing the ball for 4 and 6 is great, but when we work on, like, as the listeners now, they want to know more about your captaincy in terms of what you did on the field, moving players around on the field. When you're under pressure, How do you react? Those sort of things.
Yeah, well, captaincy is also one of those things that you get better at the more you do it. When I first started it, I was very naive, and everything's a rush. It's like when you start a new job, everything you feel under pressure, time pressure. You've got to count the overs. How many overs has the bowler got left in a one-day game? You've got the crowd yelling at you to hurry up. You've got players asking you where they should field. So you've got so many things going on, and it only comes in time where you can relax and you realise, you just tell people, no, you're on my time clock. We're on already. And then you can slow the game down to the pace that you want to control the pace of the game. So these things come with experience. And tactics on the field. I think that's what we all, when we talk about captaincy, we all look at I moved a fourth slip into place, and the next ball the guy edged it straight to fourth slip. That's what we all consider captaincy. But captaincy is much more than that. You've got the off-field captaincy, I figure, is as important as the on-field captaincy. To have that relationship with your players off the field so that the people are happy. You almost become like a counsellor. There was times my players are unhappy off the field, and I would, take time to ask them and make sure that if they needed something away from cricket, that they would then enable them to be in the right frame of mind when we're on the field to then be able to play at their best. It's knowing the feeling in the side. We're all really tired from having had a long, hard summer, and the right thing to do is to let the players have the day off from training. So captaincy is not just on the field, albeit that's the trailer as such. When you see the movies, people put a trailer of the best bits. That's the tactics. So that's what everyone sees. But behind the scenes, the making of the movie is also as important.
In terms of making decisions on the field, where were you inspired? What did you study in terms of, because a lot of coaches I see them, I say, they tell a player, oh, go home and go and watch, go on the internet and find your field placements, learn your field placements. So, okay, I know my field placements. So I know where a third man is, or a fine legger is, or a first slip is. So I start putting these players in positions. But I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, because I learned through time that a ball gets knocked to the boundary before you start to move a person into that position. You don't really calculate and think to yourself, that was a bad ball that person bowled. I'm trying to get him to nick it to first slip. If I'm bowling a ball wide out outside off stump, and a guy goes and cuts it for 4 runs, instead of getting the ball just outside the off stump, there's a big difference. But a captain will move a player, a naive captain will move a player out there. Why is that?
Yeah, I think you answered the question yourself right at the beginning when you said that, you work it out as you got experience. You can't buy experience. It's just like batting. You can't learn to score hundreds without first experiencing. You don't cut a bad shot out until you've got out 4 or 5 times from it. So it's just learning what works, what doesn't work. Also knowing bowlers. I know that when a certain bowler bowls, that the ball's more likely to go into a certain area. Or if they do bowl a bad delivery, it is likely to be a short, wide one that gets cut before, as opposed to another bowler. If they make an error, it's to drop it short. Maybe you need an extra person back on the leg side boundary. You get to know your bowlers and you get to know where the ball goes when they're bowling. So yeah, it's experience. It's just experience. And you know what? Experience comes from being observant and being aware and just noticing things. You start seeing the ball going into one place a lot, and maybe you need to put a fielder there. But your excellent point you made before was you can't set a field for the one-off bad ball. So if someone gets hit for a 4 in one place, you've got to go to your bowler and say, I don't want you bowling there. If they do it again, then you've got to look at trying to get a new bowler, as opposed to put the fielder out for a ball that he shouldn't have bowled in the first place. So, and you get a feeling, again, the more you do it, you get a feeling whether the bowler's going to keep making that mistake or not. So these are all things that are going inside the captain's head, as well as, how long to the new ball, how many overs this guy bowled in his spell, how many overs is he allowed before he's, all these things you've got to be spinning around in your head and taking into consideration when making your next decision.
Okay, let me give you a couple of scenarios here, typical scenarios. I'm going to be the coach of this team, and you're going to be Captain Hollioake. All right? I'll give you the scenario, and you tell me how you respond to it. One of the things I like to coach my teams with is a philosophy of the first 10 overs of a game. I like to tell my players to be aggressive against the opening bowlers, because I am of the belief if you get rid of if you hit the first 2 best bowlers out the attack early, and you, like, for example, I played against a Sri Lankan team, and what they would do is hit the first fast bowler straight back for 6. Once they did that in the first over, suddenly that captain opens up the field, and then they just push for 1s and 2s. How would you handle this situation?
Well, there's a number of ways you can do it. You can either carry on. I like to think that if I've opened with my bowlers, if I'm playing against you, I'm presuming here.
Yes.
If my bowlers are bowling you, I might either put a fielder back there and try and make you play a different shot, which hopefully will make you play in an area that you're not comfortable in. Maybe if I put a fielder straight back down the ground, then I might make you try and hit it somewhere else. So you might hit across the line. But the one thing I'll try and do is get to the bowler and get in his ear and say, don't panic. They're obviously trying to be aggressive here. I want you to keep going. You're our bowler. You've done this before. You're our main bowler. This is obviously an attack from them. So you just keep putting the ball in the good area on a good line of length. And if they want to keep taking risks, history will suggest that they'll get out. So we can move the field around and make them try and hit the ball in areas we don't want them to. But I'd try and just fill my bowler with confidence that, that history suggests that people can't keep taking risks against a bowler putting it on a good line of length. So I just try and put his mind at ease, really, and then trust in him.
Okay, great answer. The second scenario is this, and it's a very, very reoccurring thing happening in world cricket, the last over. All your bowlers have taken a good tap in this match. So there's no one person you can rely on as such, because they've all taken a bit of a beating from this batsman. It's the last over. They need to score 6 of the last over. Which bowler do you bring back and why?
Well, I think in this day and age, 6 runs off the last over, you may as well just give up and walk off. The guys these days, they seem to score, even 12, 13, 15 off the last over. You're not safe. So it's a tough one. I think you have to, and it's similar to the scenario I mentioned before, is you've just got to go with your best bowler, the one who's done it for you the most over the recent 2 or 3 months or years or however long it is, the one that you've got the most faith in, and you've got to go to him and you've got to say to him, take away the fear of failure. Say to him, listen, we've pretty much lost this game. I just need you to run up and whatever plan you're going to go with, whether it be 6 Yorkers or slower balls, I need you to do it and do it to the best of your ability. I accept that the odds are against you, but you just got to give it your best, and I'm not going to blame you if it doesn't go right. So you're just enabling that bowler to relax, hopefully, and he's not expecting to win, so there's no pressure on him. He just run up and put the ball in the place that he wants to put it in, and at the end of the day, if the guy's batting as well as you told me he's batting, we're probably struggling anyway. But it's that's probably your best chance. At the end of the day, you can just play the percentages.
Okay, fantastic. How do you deal with difficult players who feel that they're bigger than the team?
Yeah, that's a good question and quite topical. Consider what we're talking about with Kevin Peterson before. Right. It's I watched that instance from afar, and I've played in sides with difficult characters. Surrey, we were full of difficult characters. What happens is with a lot of good players, there usually comes difficult characters. As I mentioned before, what creates brilliance is often thinking a bit differently to other people. Albert Einstein, they say he was very different. He was a genius. Do you know what I mean? So, and the same thing applies to sport. So, what I tried to do in that instance, instead of trying to change the individual, which is pretty hard to do because by the time you get to play for your country or whatever, you're 25 years ingrained in your habits. It's very hard for me as a captain to come and change you, I believe. You can make little changes and little compromises with, but what I try and do is make the rest of the side understand the flaws of each other person in the side so that we all understand it. In the instance of Kevin Peterson, he's difficult, but instead of all the team getting around and huddling around and complaining about him, as the captain, I would try and say, listen, we know Kevin Peterson's a dick. He's a dick, but he's a bloke, and we have to accept that he's going to sometimes think he's bigger than the side, and that's also part of the thing which makes him brilliant. So there's no point complaining about it. It's not going to change. We just need to get on, accept that he's the way he is, and just play the game. Let him be the way he is. Let him think he's the best player in the side, but he's going to win us a hell of a lot of games. So let's just understand that and not let it affect the rest of the side. But that's how I try and handle that.
But what about when he becomes, well, not KP, but when he becomes disruptive, or her for that matter, when they become disruptive to the side, when they're breaking down coaching sessions, when they're constantly talking in the nets, when they won't turn up to training on time, when they feel that they are law unto their own selves and starting to influence other players?
Yeah, well, I think, number one is you've got to have a list of non-negotiables. You've got to have a line in the sand where that player knows if he steps over that line, then, that he'll be punished. If he doesn't turn up, well, he's going to be dropped. That's just a non-negotiable, and that player has to know that that's a very, very real threat. By the same token, he's got to be treated fairly for him to understand that it's not just him who, if he doesn't turn up for training, it's anybody who doesn't turn up for training, so he doesn't feel persecuted. You have your non-negotiables, but then you've also, the rest of the side has to understand that there's a human element to individuals, and we're not all the same. We're not all robots. We make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So I think people will I forgive people, mistakes when they've made them because of their character. When people just aren't abiding by team rules, certain team rules, I used to call them non-negotiables. People knew that if they stepped out of line, that just wasn't acceptable. So that's just the way it was. And at the end of the day, the team is far more important than the individual. So, but individuals make up that team as well. So you've got to try and work with those individuals to make your team. But if it's at the detriment of the team, then that individual has to respect the team rules.
Fantastic. As a player, as a captain, or just a cricket player, when you lose form, how do you block out the comments that are made and said to you? Because sometimes people can be quite unthoughtful with their comments in the dressing room. You got duck. You ain't got it. You're a fluke. That sort of stuff. People can be quite cruel at times. How do you overcome all that and believe in yourself that you're going to get runs again or you're going to take wickets again?
I think firstly, one of the, you talked before about captaincy and looking at people who had been before you and learning off them. One of the captains I learnt off was a guy called Dermot Reeve, who played a handful of games for England and was a very successful captain for Warwickshire. And he captained Brian Lara when he had that great summer over in England. And one thing he used to do is he used to ban any piss taking about cricket ability. So he wouldn't allow me to walk around and take the piss out of you for scoring a duck or for your inability to face an outswinger or your inability to not bowl off spin very well. He wouldn't allow that. He said that's not for within the chamber. It would be okay. It would be fine for you to take the piss out of my big nose or out of my my bad dress sense or my poor dancing. That's within the bounds of fair. But we tried in our changing room not to do that, purely because it's hard enough to cope with the pressures from chat from the opposition and from media and stuff like that without your own players adding more pressure and stress to that. So we tried to stop that kind of banter in our change room, and I'd say, look, there's enough other things to take the piss out of each other for without having to do it about cricket. So that was something that I tried to put out of the change room. But at the end of the day as well, we're professional cricketers, and you've got to be able to deal with these things that get thrown at you, and you've got to try and overcome them. And I think that's probably what differentiates the professional cricketer from the amateur cricketer, is the ability to be able to put that stuff out of your head and just move on.
Okay, just before we come to the end of this interview, I've got a couple of questions to ask you from my Facebook friends and fans that are here from the... I'll tell you a couple of the names. You may have seen them on cricket, the Facebook. World Cricket Experts, the Facebook Cricket Council, and the Cricket Maniacs. So these are three of the Facebook pages, and I said to them I was going to talk to you, and they started hitting me up with questions. Okay. So one of the questions I was asked on, let me just check the questions we've got here. One of the questions asked is, it goes here, I would like to ask him, it's Chirag Jain. He says, sorry Chirag if I pronounced your name wrong. He goes, what precautions should someone take to improve performances of teams like Ireland and Scotland and Kenya?
Well, again, that comes back to what I was saying a little bit before about, I was fortunate at Surrey we had the best players. Now I presume he's talking about on a world scale. Yes. I presume he's talking about Ireland competing with the likes of England, South Africa, Australia, or even Bangladesh and Zimbabwe. Well, first things first, I think you've got to accept that you're not Australia and you're not West Indies from the 70s. You're a side without the best players. So I think you've got to be realistic in your expectations. It's not a major sport in those countries. So you have to be realistic with your goals. I think what you need to do is keep the continuity within your side. You need to make sure that you're picking your best players and sticking with them. That's one thing that these smaller nations have in their favour, is competition for places isn't as much as in the bigger countries. So the one advantage you might have is the continuity of your team would probably be better than in other countries, where if a guy fails a couple of times, there's someone knocking on the door to take his place. So you need to make that work as an advantage for you and try and make sure that your team is always the same and pretty much stable. Everyone knows their role within that side, so you're not trying to integrate new players into the side all the time. I think you've got to try and turn your weakness into a strength, and I think that you've got to try and also possibly mentally play on the fact that you are an underdog and let the players that they're playing against know that let the teams they're playing against know that they don't want to lose, to try and put pressure on that side. No one wants to lose to Ireland because, and trust me, I know because we did. So you need, when you get into the situation where you know that the other side aren't worried about or nervous of you, then that puts pressure on the bigger sides.
Excellent stuff. Second question is from Sahib Abdullah. Sahib says, England are very best in test for the past 4 to 5 years, but why are they struggling limited overs, especially in one ODIs? They have good limited over players in their own country, but they're not giving them more chances. That's his question.
Yeah, that's a good question. And you know what? I wish I had the answer to that, because that's not just something for the last 4 or 5 years. That's been the case since I can remember. I think the 92 or something was the last time England made the World Cup final. So it's been okay. Yes, they've had success in test matches, and that's a recent thing. But the one days, I don't know. England should be one of the best sides in the world. We play more one-day competitions than any other side. We play more one-day cricket than any other side. I wish I had the answer to that. It's just, and that's the beautiful thing. That's why cricket is the game we love, because you don't always have the answers, and there's no guarantees in the game. You'd like to think that the side that domestically played the most one-day competitions, that would translate into being the best in the world at that particular game. But in this instance, it doesn't. And I really don't have an answer that I would be prepared to put out there and put my name to it, because I don't think that's, and I don't think anyone really does know. It's just one of those things where maybe they're just not getting it right. It does seem odd though, and it's a great question.
Okay, Fardeen Kibria asks, how do you think the corruption in cricket can be put to an end?
I don't think it can. I think that it's there. There's a lot of money these people are investing in. I don't think, when I say it can't be put to an end, I don't think that threat will ever go away. Can we minimise the chances of it happening? Yes, I believe we can, and I believe the authorities are doing a great job there. It's been made very publicly aware. They've banned mobile phones from changing rooms. Some people have gone to jail. People have been banned for life. So the threats are really there, and the punishment is now obvious. So at the end of the day, no one can be there 24 hours a day preventing these people who are going to be there because there's money there, approaching players. And, no one can account for the greed of certain, and they are a minority, individual players who choose to take those offers up. But I think the authorities are doing a great job. They've made it very aware. They've done all the measures which they can to let people know if they get caught, they'll be punished. They've punished people. They've followed through. So they're doing everything right. And they just have to remain vigilant on it. And, I just try and eradicate it as much as they can. And it's a sad thing. I was approached back in 1997 in Dubai during a tournament. And, it's just, I think things have moved on a lot since then. I actually helped the ICC with their investigations into that. I reported it to the authorities immediately. But it's, it's a sad thing. It's a blight on our sport. And I have to say, I really hand it to the authorities. I think they've done a tremendous job in trying to eradicate it. And you can't account for the greed of individuals. You can't do that. You can't tarnish all the other very honest and hardworking sportsmen out there with the brush of a couple of rare, greedy individuals.
Okay. I think I've got one here from Sinath Gupta. This is quite a good question. Who was the better player, Adam or Ben? Any stories he remembers of when they were growing up, do convey to him that Ben lives in the heart of true cricket fans.
Well, that's an easy answer for that one. I was definitely the better player out of the two of us. We used to, and I've got actual proper proof for this as well, because we used to play in the garage, and I won every single time. Bearing in mind he's 6 years younger than me, so
Right.
I figured that by the age of 16, when he got to 10 and he started getting close to beating me, I didn't play him anymore. So, I refused to play him anymore because he would have beaten me. So I remained undefeated in the garage. Therefore, I think I keep the title as the best Hollioake.
I think that was a great strategic move, Captain.
It was a good decision to not keep playing, I think. No, in honesty, I don't think that's even a very good question because he was a far better player than me, far more talented. I was a decent player. I was a hard-working player, but he was born to do it. He was a natural athlete. He made cricket beautiful. I actually made it look quite ugly. So he was a rare talent, and I guess this is a shame that the world didn't get to see more of him.
A real shame, a real shame. I have a question to ask. I've asked many, but this will probably be my last question, and it's quite a painful question to ask you, Adam, because as you know, I do cricket coaching. I've coached cricket for many years. I overcame a 7-year illness of chronic fatigue syndrome through coaching cricket. It was my young people motivated me to fight the illness and overcome the illness. And it was young people that gave them the drive to keep going. And I won a national award in the UK for community work. But the cricket community, in terms of getting interviews, you're the first cricket interview I've ever done, and I've interviewed quite a few people. Why is it that when it comes to doing interviews with cricketers, they are so either aloof, or rude, or not interested? Why is that?
Yeah, that's an amazingly topical question. Actually, I got asked to do an interview today from another website. I think it's called Cricket Family, or I think it was Cricket Country. It was. It's an Indian website, and they asked me about my. I played an innings against South Africa in the ICC Trophy back in '98, I think it was. I got 83 against South Africa, so they asked me to relive that leading into the ICC Champions Trophy, which is just about to start. And recounted during that innings, I got bad dehydration and had to be on a drip, and I came out with an unfortunate quote. I felt like I'd smoked 10 joints. Not that I've ever done drugs before. Right. And everybody in the room knew it was a throwaway comment. Everybody knew it was said in jest, and everyone knew the tone it was said in. But don't get me wrong, it was a foolish thing to say. But unfortunately, a couple of the media the next day reported it as Hollioake and drug scandal, and it was just nonsense. Do you know what I mean? So it's things like that which make players wary of doing interviews, and I know very much the attitude of a lot of these people is the less interviews they do, the better, because the less chance they've got of getting misquoted or having. I've been friends with you on Facebook for years, man. So it's like you asked me to do the interview, I'll do it. And we've got history there. But I can sort of understand the other side. Some of the players as well. They feel that they get let down occasionally. But I feel I've been let down as well at certain times, and I always just try and take each person as they come and give them the benefit of the doubt. And I try to, cricket. I think we all love cricket.
Yes.
That's the common thing. And, if someone wants to misquote me, then that's just a shame. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we love cricket. It provides a lot of enjoyment to all of us. And, for me to have the opportunity to talk about the sport that I love is, I take that opportunity, and I'm humbled even to be asked by most of these interviews.
Adam Hollioake, thank you so much for talking to BWTM TV. I can assure you that once this interview has been uploaded, it will be uploaded across Facebook and across all the cricketing communities, so people can learn and gain the knowledge from yourself, which is, unquestionably great for young people and for people that are lovers of the game.
Thanks for having me on here. It's been an honour for me.
Thank you, Adam Hollioake. I appreciate it.